Good afternoon and welcome. This is Spotlight Africa coming to you live from Spectrum Television, Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. My name is Uyai Imam. Today on Spotlight Africa, Ugandan president signs law bringing back military trials for civilians. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa arrives in Canada for G7 summit. Tanzanian opposition leader to represent himself in treason trial. United States considers adding more African countries to travel ban. Plus, Mali court places Canada's Barrick gold mine under provisional administration. These stories are all just ahead of Spotlight Africa. Stay with us. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us to begin Spotlight Africa today. We head to Uganda, where President Yoweri Museveni signed into law an amendment allowing military tribunals to try civilians under certain circumstances. The country's parliament said on Monday the Supreme Court had called such trials unconstitutional in a ruling earlier this year. Judges had argued that military courts were neither impartial nor competent to exercise judicial functions. The Ugandan parliament passed an amendment last month to address some of these issues, despite boycott from opposition lawmakers, who said the new bill violated the Supreme Court's decision. Human rights activists have long accused the Ugandan government of using military courts to persecute opponents of the president. Yoweri Museveni has spent close to 40 years in power. His aides have denied rights groups accusations and said only civilians who used guns for political violence were prosecuted in such tribunals. Away from that, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa shook hands with a welcome delegation after arriving in Calgary for the Group of Seven summit. The G7 meeting is taking place this week in the Canadian Rockies, with leaders of the biggest economies arriving Sunday. The summit will take place in Kanasix in a resort surrounded by mountains and trees. The summit is overshadowed by an escalating conflict between Israel and Iran and US President Donald Trump's unresolved trade war with allies and rivals alike. The war in Ukraine will also be on the agenda. President Volodymyr Zelensky is due to attend the summit and is expected to meet with Trump, a reunion coming just months after their bruising Oval Office encounter, which laid bear the risk of having a meeting with the US president on the sidelines of the summit. Ramaphosa is set to meet with the US President Donald Trump. It will be their first bilateral encounter since the controversial White House meeting in May, when Ramaphosa was confronted by Trump with unproved claims of a genocide taking place against white South Africans. In another development, the main opposition leader in Tanzania was granted permission on Monday to represent himself in his treason trial after being denied the right to meet his lawyers in private by prison authorities. Tundu Lisu was arrested April 9 and charged with treason after addressing a public rally calling for electoral reforms ahead of planned general elections in October. Lisu's Chadima party has been critical of the absence of an independent electoral commission and laws that favor the ruling CCM party, which has been in power since Tanzania's independence in 1961. Lisu survived an assassination attempt after being shot 16 times in 2017, 3 years before the last election. The opposition leader told the court on Monday that he was being forced to speak to his lawyers through a phone in a small room and was worried that anyone could be listening or recording the conversation. Moving now to Kenya, where deputy police chief stepped aside on Monday as investigations into the death of a blogger while in custody continue. The death of Albert Owang, who was accused of defaming Deputy Inspector General Eliud Lagat, sparked days of protest in Nairobi. Several demonstrators were injured and property destroyed. Lagat said on Monday that he was stepping aside in view of the ongoing investigations into the death of Owang. The field he failed, I beg your pardon, to acknowledge that he was com- he was the complainant. Lagnant's boss, Inspector General Douglas Kanja, previously said that investigations into Owang's online activities started after Langat filed an official complaint. Recall that Owang was arrested June 6 in Western Kenya and driven 400 kilometers, about 248 miles, to Nairobi for publishing what police said was false information on social media. He was found dead 2 days later at the Central Police Station, and police attributed his death to hitting his head against the cell wall. A pathology report refuted the police account. It said the deceased had head injury, neck compression, and other injuries spread all over the body that are pointing towards assault. Away from that, US is considering adding more African countries to travel ban. If implemented, the new measures would mean nearly 40 African countries face bans or some form of travel restrictions to the United States. An internal State Department cable cites reasons such as unreliable identity documents, passport security, and the refusal or unwillingness by some countries to receive deported nationals. Other grounds listed in the cable are terrorism, involvement in anti Semitic and anti American activity. Overall, the document names 12 grounds to threaten travel restrictions against 36 countries in total. The list includes major US partners in Africa, such as Kenya, Angola, Egypt, Ethiopia, Ivory Coast, and Nigeria. The others are Benin, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Cameroon, Democratic Republic of Congo, Djibouti, Gabon, Gambia, Ghana, Liberia, Malawi, and Mauritania. Niger, Sao Tome and Principe, Senegal, South Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe also appear in the cable. The affected countries have 60 days within which to address Washington's concerns lest they face partial or full travel bans. Recall that last week, the US banned travel from Chad, Congo Republic, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Libya, Somalia, and Sudan. It also placed heightened restrictions on travel from Burundi, Sierra Leone, and Togo. Elsewhere, after days of uncertainty and negotiations, the funeral arrangements for Zambia's former president have been finalized. Edgar Lungu, who led Zambia from 2015 to 2021, died 11 days ago in South Africa, where he was receiving treatment for an undisclosed illness. According to his family, he had left instructions that his political rival and current president, Hakainde Hichilema, should not come anywhere near his body, but a spokesperson for the Lungu family confirmed that an arrangement had been reached with the government that allowed for Hichilema to preside over a state funeral next Sunday. The row caused consternation among some in Zambia, with people left wondering how they should mourn their former leader. Heavy rains in dry season cause havoc in DR Congo's capital. Stay tuned for details of these and more in a moment. Thanks for staying tuned, and now we'll bring you the rest of the stories all around the continent. In Mali, Barrick Mining's Logo Gantogo Gold Mining Complex has been placed under provisional administration for 6 months. The move hands control of Canada's biggest operation to state appointed management and is seen as a major escalation in an ongoing dispute between the company and Mali's military rulers. Barrick Gold has been in conflict with the administration over alleged unpaid taxes and unfair contracts with past governments. Monday's decision comes after Mali closed Barrick's office in the capital Bamako and warned it would take control of the mine, which has been shuttered owing to the months long dispute. The dispute culminated in an arrest warrant in December 2024 for Barrick CEO Mark Bristow and the company's offer to pay $370 million to the government. Barrick submitted a request for arbitration to the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes to address disagreements with Mali. Despite this, the government took a series of escalatory measures, including the arrest of Barrick gold employees who remain detained and the suspension of gold exports. Away from that, Sudan's war is of gold exports. Away from that, Sudan's war is in strategic storage. Each side stakes its hopes on a new offensive, a new delivery of weapons, a new political alliance, but neither can gain a decisive advantage. The losers are the Sudanese people. Every month, there are more who are hungry, displaced, despairing. The Sudan Armed Forces triumphantly announced the recapture of central Khartoum in March. It broadcast pictures of its leader, General Abdel Fattah al Burhan, walking through the ruins of the capital's Republican palace, which had been controlled by the paramilitaries of the Rapid Support Forces since the earliest days of the war in April of 2023. The army deployed weapons newly acquired from Egypt, Turkey, and other Middle Eastern countries, including Qatar and Iran, but its offensive quickly stalled. The RSF, headed by General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hamdati, responded with a devastating drone attack on Port Sudan, which is both the interim capital of the military government and also the main entry point for the humanitarian aids. These were long range, sophisticated drones which the army accuses the United Arab Emirates of supplying, a charge the UAE rejects, along with well documented reports that it has been backing the RSF during the 27-month long conflict. On a rather sad development, at least 29 people have been killed in floodwaters and landslides in the Democratic Republic of Congo's capital, Kinshasa, following unusually heavy rains in the dry season. The Interior Minister has reported homes were swept away, roads were flooded, and widespread power cuts were recorded as a third of the city was affected by the downpour. DR Congo's meteorological agency, Meteosat, said that 900 millimeter of rain was recorded on Saturday morning, higher than on any single day during the rainy season that lasts from November to May. Experts say the heavy rains are being fueled by climate change. The consequences are devastating because of a lack of urban planning and proper drainage. Lastly, today on Spotlight Africa, Catholics from Goma and relatives of a Congolese customs worker on Sunday watched with pride the beatification of their compatriots by Pope Leo XIV at the Vatican in Rome. Floribert Buana Choibin Kositi was kidnapped and killed in 2007 after he refused to accept a bribe and allow rancid rice from Rwanda to be transported across the border. His relative Justine Kanyere Calvo, who watched the televised event at home, said his beatification sent a strong message about justice, honesty, and integrity. As an official with the Congolese government's Customs Quality Control Office, The 26-year-old knew the risk of resisting bribes offered to public officials, but he also knew the risk of allowing the spoiled food to be distributed to the most desperate. The late Pope Francis recognized Cositi as the martyr of the faith last year, setting him on the path to beatification and to possibly become Congo's first. The local church diocese put up giant posters in the streets of Goma to remind the city's population of the beatification event. On Sunday, the Catholic Church in Goma celebrated him with prayer sessions organized in his memory. And that's all we have for Spotlight Africa, bringing you stories all around the continent. This has been put together by Spectrum Television. Do also follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. I am Uyai MM. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good afternoon.